Morning, mathematicians. Today, mathematicians will count, write, and relate numbers to 120 by using hide zero cards. So let's review hide zero cards. We have the number 46. Let me ask you, why can't we see the zero? Because it's hidden what? Behind the 6. But let me ask you, what is one way that we can make 46? By adding 40 and 6. Do you see the 0? So the 0 is in the ones place. And when we put the 6, when we add the 6 is also in the ones place. So the 6 now takes the place of the 0 and hides it. And that's what we call a hide 0 card. Okay? 46 equals to 40 plus 6. Now we're going to follow the video to continue with the lesson.
All right, this is first grade, Module 6, Lesson 7, and in this lesson, students are going to continue their counting and extend their counting up to 120. So it's going to be kind of cool. Now, the directions do say to use hide zero cards. That's totally not really necessary, although, you know, if you want, you can use them. So don't go freaking out if you don't have hide zero cards. Those were found in Lesson 3. So relax, you don't necessarily need them. Let's just get started. So the focus is to be using this vertical grid to do the counting and to have our students practice and remember how to, count 51, 52, 53. So this is your tens, right? Your 5 tens all the way up to 6 tens. And then this is your column of 6 tens plus some ones. And then you get to 70 and you switch over. Really, okay, a couple of things about this. First off, I wonder why they started with 1. If they started with 0, it would be 0 through 9, and then the next one would be 10 through 19, as in this column, the whole column represents 110 plus some ones, and then this column would be 2 tens plus some ones. But because they started with 1 rather than 0, each column is a little bit of a mixture. It's got 2 tens plus some ones, all the way down to here, where all of a sudden you have 3 tens and no ones. And then you scooch over to the next column and you continue with 3 tens and some ones. So parents and teachers, consider, if you want, you're not going to break anything, but consider doing your grid starting at 0 and going that way. Another thing to consider is I wondered, as I was doing this lesson and studying this, why did we do a vertical? Why didn't we do kind of more the classic horizontal hundreds grid? And I think the reason, parents and teachers, and it's not fatal if you don't have a copy of this vertical grid, but I think their reasoning was, as we're moving down, we want to highlight the fact that the tens are staying the same and only the ones are changing. And I think that becomes more obvious if we're moving vertically as opposed to if we had a traditional grid that was moving from left to right. Right? And then the idea is, when we get down here, are we stuck? Are we done? Or can we continue? And of course we want students to say, oh, we can continue. Now we have 100, and it's 100 plus 1, 100 plus 2, 100 plus 3. But we're going to practice without saying the word plus, or without the classic saying 101 or 102. So we're going to try and avoid saying the word plus or the word and. We're just going to continue 101, 102, 103, 104. Now, that kind of mirrors back here when we did the say 10 way with our teens. Like, for example, 13, we would say 10, 3, 10, 4, 10, 5. Well, 10, 5 becomes 105. 10, 6. For 16 becomes 106. So we're not saying 10 and 6, we're saying 10, 6. That means over here we're going to say 106, not 106. So that's a little bit of a dwelling on this grid. Why does it go vertical instead of horizontal? Consider starting at 0 instead of 1. There's a lot to this first grade concept. And of course, because we are doing vertically, our grid here is vertical, and our job is to fill in the missing numbers. So it's kind of nice. They begin with a lot of scaffolding. Start with 71, and then we've got 72, 73. Hey, look at that. We're right, because there's 74. And then we've got 75, 76, 77, 78. And sure enough, there's our self-check, 79 and 80. And so the idea is we're just going to keep going and keep working on our grid. Now, because we are seeing a bunch of 7 tens, right? 7 10 and some 1s. So 7 tens and some 1s. We're going to end down here at all of a sudden 8 tens. That means this is a grid that was based on a grid that started with the number 1. If you start with a number 0, your grid is going to be a little bit different here, and you might need to do some editing. So we're removing some scaffolding, we're adding some difficulty, because now we're going horizontal. So write the numbers in, fill in the numbers to continue the counting. So we've got 99. What comes after 99? 100. What comes next? 101. What comes next? 102. 103. So parents and teachers, help your students learn to say the number 103, not 103. And that's the process for this problem. Going down here, we're adding to the complexity. We have to figure out which one of these sequences is incorrect. 116, 117, 118, 119, 120. Well, everything seems fine right here. Let's take a look at B. 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 110. What should have come next? Well, obviously, it should have been 101. So our job is to write it correctly. So let's do that. So it should have been 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101. So it should look like this, not like that. And for the last slide of this video, once again, they just continue adding to the complexity. This is beautifully sequenced from question 1 all the way through question 4. They just gradually remove the scaffolding and the support system and cause the student to do a little bit more of the thinking. I love it. So what's this? 113, 114. What comes next? Well, 115, etc. 116. All right, let's take a look at C. 102, so what comes next? At this point, we're going to assume we're counting up by ones. So it's going to be 103, 104, 105. How about D? So that's 88, 89. What comes after 89? Well, it would be 90. And then 91, 92, 93. And at all points, parents and teachers, if your students are struggling with the abstract concept of just these numbers, make sure you always consider going backwards in the CPA process. So we're at the abstract because we're dealing with just plain old numbers. Consider if you have some students who are struggling, go backwards one step and use pictures, pictorial. For example, on 88, 89, I might start with some quick tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ones. So here's my 8 tens and 8 ones. There's my 88. And then I might say, okay, well, let's add 89, 90. So we just filled in a quick 10. So we now have 9 tens and no ones. And then we've got 1 1. So now we have 9 tens and 1 1. So the idea is, if students are struggling with the abstract, go backwards and go to the pictorial to provide scaffolding for your students. I skipped B. I saved it for the last because I actually think it's the hardest, because it doesn't give us starting numbers. It leaves us blank. So this is actually, in my mind, the hardest. So we're going to let your students find whatever method they want to fill in these correct values. And there's a variety of ways students might come up with the explanation that that's 119, this is 118, and this is 117. So a variety of ways that students might use to explain their thinking. Parents and teachers enjoy that conversation around this problem. And that wraps up first grade Module 6, Lesson 7. We are extending our counting up to 120. We may or may not be using hide zero cards, but we are relating our numbers. Like, for example, 15 can be thought of as 10-5, and then 105 is going to be thought of as 105. So just in the same way that we used to say